He looked straight at me and said the words I never thought I would hear from my own son. "You're going to the facility whether you want to or not." For a moment, everything stopped. The air felt thick. My heart forgot to beat. I stared at him, hoping I had misheard. He stood by the window. Arms crossed, face calm, too calm. He waited for me to cry, to fall apart, to beg him not to send me away. But I didn't. I couldn't. I just looked at him, at the man who once ran into my arms after every nightmare, the boy who used to hide behind my skirt when thunder scared him, and I asked myself how a heart that once belonged to mine could turn so cold. I didn't speak, not because I had nothing to say, but because if I opened my mouth, my soul would pour out. I wasn't ready for him to see that. He mistook my silence for weakness. He turned his head and sighed. "I can't keep doing this. Mom," he said, "you're making things harder. For me, for my wife. This isn't a life for anyone." He said it like I was some bill that kept showing up, some box taking space in his house. No anger, no shouting, just calm words that cut deeper than knives. I sat still. Each word hit me softly, but the pain sank deep. And inside my head, one question kept spinning. What did I do to deserve this? But no one knows what a mother keeps silent. I walked to the kitchen like nothing had happened. My hands trembled as I filled the kettle. I made coffee, though I couldn't taste a thing. The cup rattled against the saucer. I sat and watched the steam rise, thin and quiet. From the other room, I heard him talking on the phone. He said there was an opening. He said he would take care of everything. 2 days. That's all it took to erase a mother. I gripped my mug so tight my knuckles turned white. The smell of coffee filled the air. But I couldn't feel warmth, only cold. The kind that starts in the chest and spreads slowly. He didn't see me watching him. He didn't remember the nights I stayed awake by his bedside when he was sick. He didn't remember the mornings. I worked double shifts so he could go to private school. He didn't remember. The years I ate less so he could have more. And now he was sending me away, as if love had an expiration date. When he came back into the kitchen later, he spoke like nothing had happened. He smiled, poured himself water, asked if I needed anything. I asked softly, "Would you like me to make you dinner?" He looked confused. Maybe he expected tears, but I wasn't going to cry. Not anymore. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed. The moonlight crept across the floor. I didn't cry. I couldn't. My heart had no tears left. Instead, I made a promise. If someone was going to make decisions about my life, it was going to be me. Marcus didn't know who I really was. He forgot I wasn't born tired. He forgot I was once strong. The woman who ran a bakery 6 days a week to build this house. The woman who kept everything together when his father died. He forgot that every brick in this house carries my fingerprints. I lay in bed, listening to the ticking clock. Every tick was a memory, every talk was a goodbye. The warmth that once filled. This home was gone. My son wanted to send me away like an old memory, but I wasn't done. Yet not with this life, not with my story. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. I made breakfast as usual. Marcus came downstairs, half awake, already rushing. He said he had errands. I nodded, smiling faintly. When he left, I opened the closet and reached for a small wooden box I had hidden for years. Inside were my most precious things: the deed to the house, my savings, my will, a few photos, letters and clippings, pieces of a life built with love. I touched the papers and whispered, "He thinks I'm weak." I smiled. He has no idea who I am. I closed the box carefully and put it back. It wasn't time yet, but soon. That evening, I heard Marcus and his wife talking in the living room. "It's a nice place," she said. "There's a garden. It's peaceful. She'll be fine there." Her words were gentle, but they cut deep. As if I were a piece of furniture they didn't know where to put. I pulled the blanket over my shoulders. It wasn't cold, but I needed something between me and their voices. That night, I remembered the day Marcus was born, his first cry, the nurse saying he had strong lungs. I thought that meant he'd grow brave. Maybe it meant he'd grow loud. He always wanted more. I gave him everything. When his father died, Marcus was 15. He looked at me differently after that. Once, when I cried at the table, he said, "Mom, people die. Get over it." I told myself he was just grieving. I kept cooking for him, kept hoping the gentle boy would return, but he never did. Years passed, he moved away, built a career, married, he visited less, and when he did, he looked around the house like he was measuring it. One day he said, "You should sell this place. It's too much for you." He didn't look at me when he said it. That was the first sting, the quiet one that tells a mother her child no longer sees her as a person. The calls came after that. "Mom, did you sign the papers yet?" "Mom, it's for your own good." Every call peeled away a piece of me. Then, one afternoon, he came home in his expensive suit, smelling like money and cologne, and said, "If you don't sign, I'll be forced to take other measures." That's when I knew something inside him had broken. Not in me, in him. That night, I opened my old ledger. I wrote down every expense I had ever made for him. School, food, clothes, his first car, his college. Every number was a wound. By sunrise, I knew exactly what I had to do. I wasn't going to let him take my home. Not one wall. Not one flower pot. He could take my silence for years, but not this. The next morning, I went to the market. I saw an old friend, Evelyn Reed, a retired notary. I asked her quietly, "Do you still handle estate papers?" She looked at me surprised. "For you, Thelma?" "Always." And that was the beginning. Weeks passed. Marcus stopped calling. Maybe he thought I had given up, but I stayed quiet for a reason. Sometimes silence is the strongest kind of rebellion. Then one day he came, back, that same cold look in his eyes. He said it again. Those same words that would start everything. "You're going to the facility whether you want to or not." But this time, I didn't feel fear. I felt calm, deep and steady, because I knew something he didn't. The game wasn't over. It had only just begun. That night, I did not sleep. I sat in the dark and listened to the house breathe. The walls seemed to whisper the past back to me. I thought about every year I had lived inside them, about every sound that used to mean love. Now those same sounds only meant loss. But something inside me had changed. The fear that had filled my chest was gone. What stayed was quiet strength, the kind that grows when a person has nothing left to lose. When the first light of morning slipped through the curtains, I stood up and looked in the mirror. The woman staring back was older, yes, but not broken. Her eyes were tired but steady. I whispered to her, "You are still here." I went to the kitchen and made coffee. The smell filled the room, and for a moment it felt almost normal. I sat at the table and wrote a short list on a piece of paper. The words were simple: find peace, protect the house, take back control. Marcus thought I was helpless, but he had no idea how much planning a quiet woman can do when she stops crying. He came downstairs later than usual. He was dressed neatly, already talking on his phone. When he saw me, he looked surprised that I was awake so early. "Morning, Mom," he said, half distracted. "Good morning," I answered. My voice was calm. Too calm for him to notice what lived underneath. He talked about meetings, deadlines, errands. I listened and nodded. When he left, I waited until I heard the sound of his car fade down the road. Then I went straight to my room and opened the wooden box again. Inside were the papers that proved the truth. The house was mine. Every brick, every door, every inch of the garden. I had kept those papers safe for decades, through hard years and quiet nights. Now they would save me again. I folded the deed back inside, locked the box, and hid it beneath the old quilt chest. I knew Marcus would start checking things soon. I needed to stay ahead. That afternoon, I walked to town. The air was warm, the streets calm. I moved slowly, like any other older woman running errands. But in my mind, I was building my plan. At the small grocery store, I saw Serena Hayes. She had been my neighbor for years, kind and gentle, with a smile that felt real. She touched my arm and said, "You look tired, Thelma. Everything all right?" I almost told her the truth. Almost. But then I said, "I'm fine, just busy." She nodded. "You come by for coffee sometime. My door's open." That invitation stayed in my heart all day. When I came home, Marcus's wife was in the living room reading. She smiled politely, but her eyes were cold. "Marcus says the papers will be ready tomorrow," she said. "It'll be good for everyone once things are settled." I only said, "Yes, dear." I went to my room and closed the door. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. My heartbeat slowed until I could hear the clock again. I whispered to myself, "They think I'm waiting for them." But I'm not. Over the next few days, I played the part I was given. I smiled, I cooked. I agreed with everything. Marcus relaxed, thinking I had accepted his decision. That was what I wanted. While he was at work, I began moving quietly. I gathered my personal papers, my jewelry, a few old photos. I hid them in a cloth bag inside the laundry basket. Every night after they went to bed, I checked my plan again. Step by step, it started to make sense. I knew I could not stay there much longer. If I waited too long, he would take me to that place and sign my name away. I had to leave before he realized what I was doing. One morning, I took the bus across town and met my friend Evelyn Reed again. She had helped me once before with legal papers. I told her I wanted to make a few changes. She looked at me kindly. "You always did know how to protect yourself, Thelma," she said. "I'll help you again." I left her office with fresh documents in my purse, copies, signatures, seals, proof that the house could never be sold without my permission. That evening, Marcus came home early. His eyes were sharp. "Where were you today?" he asked. "I went to the market," I said. He nodded slowly, but his expression told me he did not believe me. I kept my hands still on the table so he would not see them tremble. I smiled. "Would you like tea?" He said nothing more that night, but I felt his eyes on me. Later, when the house was quiet, I went to the window and watched the moonlight on the garden. Every flower I had planted seemed to glow. I remembered planting them when Marcus was little. He had dug holes in the dirt and said he was helping. Those flowers had grown taller than both of us, and now they were the only witnesses left. I whispered to them, "Soon I'll be free." The next morning, Marcus left early for work. His wife stayed home, busy on her computer. I took the chance to visit Serena. She welcomed me with warm hands and a kind smile. We sat at her kitchen table drinking coffee. I told her everything, how Marcus wanted to send me away, how he had spoken to me like a stranger. I told her about the papers, about my fear, about my plan. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said quietly, "You're doing the right thing. You don't owe anyone your freedom." Her words gave me strength. She promised to help me if I ever needed to leave quickly. She even mentioned her cousin in North Carolina who had a small guest house. "It's quiet there," she said. "If you ever want to start fresh, I'll drive you myself." I walked home that day feeling lighter. For the first time in months, I had hope. But hope makes you careful. That night I hid everything, the papers, the money, the letters. I left nothing where Marcus could find it. The days that followed passed in quiet tension. Marcus watched me closely. I acted as if nothing was wrong. I made his favorite meals, kept the house clean, smiled when he spoke. Inside, I was counting the days. Then one evening he came home holding a folder. He placed it on the table and said, "Mom, the arrangements are done. Friday morning, the facility will send a car." I looked at the folder but did not touch it. My voice stayed calm. "All right," I said. He looked surprised. Maybe he thought he had finally won. He smiled a little and went upstairs. The moment I heard his footsteps fade, I opened the folder. Inside were printed forms with my name already written on them. Spaces for signatures. A date. Friday. I closed the folder and set it aside. My hands were steady. My decision was made. That night I called Serena from the old phone in the hallway. I told her it was time. She said she would come for me Thursday at dawn. I thanked her and hung up before Marcus could hear. I spent the next day pretending life was normal. I washed clothes. I baked bread. I hummed songs from long ago. I even laughed at something his wife said, just to keep her calm. But when night came, I packed a small suitcase. I filled it with simple things: a few clothes, family photos, my documents, and the small wooden box that held my life. I placed the suitcase by the door and sat beside it until the sky began to lighten. My heart was beating fast, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was freedom getting ready to breathe. Before I left, I wrote a letter and placed it on the dining table under a vase of roses. The letter said, "Marcus, this house is not yours." It never was. Every wall here was built with my hands. You took my kindness for weakness, but you were wrong. I am not your burden. I am your mother, and I am free. I signed my name and set down the pen. When Serena's car pulled into the driveway, I didn't look back. I locked the door, put the key in my pocket, and walked away from the house that had been both my comfort and my cage. As we drove down the road, the sun rose behind us. The light hit the windows of the house, turning them gold for a moment. I thought of Marcus sleeping inside, not knowing that the life he controlled had just slipped from his hands. The road stretched out ahead, empty and wide. I looked at Serena and said, "I feel like I'm breathing for the first time in years." She smiled. "You are." For the next few miles, we didn't speak. The wind through the window felt soft against my face. I watched the world go by. Trees, fences, open fields. Every mile between me and that house felt like a piece of myself returning. When we reached the edge of town, Serena asked, "Are you sure you don't want to leave a message or tell anyone?" I shook my head. "He'll find the letter." That's enough. I looked out at the horizon and whispered to myself, "This isn't the end. This is the beginning." Serena nodded. "Where to now?" "Anywhere," I said. "Anywhere that's mine." The car turned onto a quiet country road. The sun climbed higher. For the first time in years, I wasn't following someone else's plan. I was following my own. I thought of Marcus and his wife sitting at breakfast the next morning, finding my letter, realizing I was gone. Maybe they would be angry. Maybe they would be scared. But I didn't care, because by then, I would already be free. And deep inside, I knew this was more than escape. It was the first step toward remembering who I had always been, the woman who built, the woman who endured, the woman who refused to disappear. It had only just begun, and now, finally, I was ready to live. The road stretched in front of us like a long silver ribbon. I watched it disappear under Serena's car. Every mile felt like another chain falling away from me. The world outside looked wide and calm. Trees moved gently in the wind, and sunlight poured across the fields. For the first time in years, I wasn't being told what to do. I wasn't being watched or measured. I was just a woman in a car, driving away from a life that had forgotten how to love me. Serena kept both hands on the steering wheel. She didn't speak much, and she didn't have to. Her silence was kind. She knew what this moment meant. I looked down at the small bag on my lap. Inside it were papers, a few photos, and enough money to start over. I touched the bag and whispered to myself, "You did it." We drove for hours. I watched the clouds change shapes, watched the towns pass by. Little diners, gas stations, children playing near fences. Every simple thing looked new. I felt like I was seeing the world for the first time again. At one point, Serena looked over and smiled. "You all right?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm more than all right." She nodded back and said softly, "Good. You deserve peace." I turned my eyes to the window again. The sky was wide and blue. For a moment, I thought about Marcus. I wondered what he was doing right then. Was he standing in the kitchen reading my letter? Was he angry? Scared? Lost? I couldn't know. And for once, I didn't need to know. By noon, we stopped at a small roadside cafe. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. We sat by the window and ordered coffee. The waitress was kind and asked if we were traveling far. Serena said, "Just looking for a new start." The woman smiled. "Sometimes that's all a person needs." I smiled back. Her words stayed with me. After lunch, we kept driving. The scenery changed. The fields turned into hills, and the hills turned into soft mountains. When we crossed the state line, Serena said quietly, "Welcome to your new beginning." I closed my eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. "Thank you," I said. "For everything," she smiled. "You'd do the same for me." By the time the sun began to fall, we reached a small town surrounded by trees. It was peaceful, quiet, and full of soft light. Serena's cousin Margaret lived there. Her house sat at the end of a gravel road, painted white with blue shutters. Margaret greeted us at the door with warm eyes and gentle hands. Come in," she said. "You must be tired." Inside, the house smelled like baked apples and clean laundry. It was simple, small, but full of kindness. I sat down at the table and felt my body relax for the first time in years. "You can stay here as long as you need," Margaret said. "No one will bother you." I looked around, taking in every corner. It wasn't my old house, but it felt like a place where I could breathe again. That night, I lay in a small room with soft white curtains. The window looked out over the trees. I listened to the sound of crickets and the soft hum of night. My heart felt heavy but also full. I whispered to myself, "You're safe now." And for the first time in a long time, I slept peacefully. When morning came, sunlight poured into the room. I got up and made my bed. The air smelled like summer. I stepped outside barefoot onto the porch and looked at the garden behind the house. Small flowers swayed in the wind. I smiled. "This will do," I said quietly. Over the next few days, I began to build a new rhythm. Serena visited often. We cooked simple meals, shared stories, and laughed about little things. I started walking every morning, exploring the quiet streets. People in town would smile and wave. No one asked where I came from, and I was grateful for that. At the market, I bought a small plant and placed it on the windowsill. Watching it grow gave me comfort. It reminded me that life can start again no matter how late. But peace is never simple. At night, when everything was still, memories would creep back in. I would see Marcus as a boy, running through the house, his laughter echoing down the hallway. I would see him on his first day of school, his nervous smile, his tiny hand holding mine. And then I would see him standing by the window as a man, saying those cruel words. Those memories hurt, but I didn't push them away. I let them pass through me like a slow wave, because healing doesn't come by forgetting. It comes by facing what was lost. One evening, Serena and I sat on the porch watching the sunset. She looked at me and said, "You look different, Thelma, lighter." I smiled. "Maybe I am." "You're not scared anymore," she said. "No," I whispered. "Not anymore." Still, sometimes my thoughts wandered back to the old house. I wondered if Marcus ever watered the flowers, if he still came home to silence. I wondered if he missed me, or if his pride was stronger than his love. A week after I left, Serena brought me a small radio. "For company," she said. "It gets lonely when the nights are too quiet." She was right. But loneliness didn't frighten me anymore. I turned on the radio and listened to soft music. The sound filled the little house like a heartbeat. Days turned into weeks. I cooked, I read, I wrote small notes in a notebook about how I felt. The pages began to fill with gentle thoughts, gratitude, memories, dreams. My handwriting grew steadier, but even as peace settled in, I knew the story wasn't finished. One morning, I woke up with a strange feeling, a weight in my chest. Something told me Marcus had found the letter. I could almost see him standing in the kitchen, reading my words, his face changing as he realized what I had done. I imagined him tearing the paper apart, shouting my name, calling my phone. I could almost hear the silence that followed. For a moment, I felt sorry for him. But then I reminded myself that sorrow was not the same as guilt. I had nothing to be sorry for. A few days later, Margaret came into the living room holding the mail. "Something for you," she said. It was a simple envelope with my name written in neat letters. No return address. My heart jumped. I knew that handwriting. Marcus. I turned it over in my hands for a long time before opening it. Inside was a short letter. The words were shaky, uneven. Mom, I don't know where you are, but I hope you're safe. I found your letter. I didn't understand before. I thought I was helping you, but I was helping myself. I'm sorry. I can't undo what I said, but I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I could. Please know that I love you, even if I didn't show it the right way. Marcus. I read it 3 times. Each word sank deep into me. For years, I had dreamed of hearing those words. Now they were written on a single page. I didn't cry. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer beside my bed. I wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. That night, I walked outside and looked at the sky. The stars were clear, shining quietly above me. I thought of Marcus again, the little boy who used to wish on stars before bed. Maybe he was looking at the same sky now. Be well, I whispered. Find peace the way I'm finding mine. As the days went on, I began to live more fully. I helped Margaret in her garden. I cooked for her when she was tired. I even started baking again, something I hadn't done in years. The smell of fresh bread filled the house, and it reminded me of the woman I used to be, strong, patient, alive. One morning, I took my coffee out to the porch. The world was quiet except for birds. I watched the sun rise and felt a small smile cross my face. I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. But life has a way of testing peace. One afternoon, Serena arrived with a worried look. Marcus came to see me, she said. My heart stopped. What did he say? He asked if you were safe, Serena said. I didn't tell him where you are. But I could see he's not the same man anymore. He looked tired, lost. I nodded slowly. Maybe he's starting to understand. I think he already does, Serena said. He said he misses you. I didn't know what to say. I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. After all the pain, after all the silence, maybe his heart was finally opening. That night, I sat at my small desk and took out a blank piece of paper. I thought about writing to him. I thought about telling him I was safe. But my hand froze. I wasn't ready. I still needed more time to heal. So I put the paper away and whispered to myself, not yet. When I'm ready, I'll know. The next morning, I walked to the edge of town. The road curved around a field full of tall grass and wildflowers. The wind moved through it softly. I stood there for a long time, breathing in the air, feeling the world open wide before me. I had no plan, no timeline, no map. But for the first time, that didn't scare me, because freedom, I was learning, is not about running away. It's about walking forward without fear. As I turned back toward the house, I thought about everything that had happened, the silence, the pain, the courage it took to leave. Every step had been hard, but it had led me here, to this moment of peace. And deep down, I knew one thing for sure. My story wasn't over. Not yet, because sometimes the hardest part of escaping isn't leaving the place you came from, it's deciding whether to go back. Those words stayed in my mind for days. They followed me everywhere, while I watered the plants, while I baked bread, while I watched the sun slip behind the trees at night. It was as if life itself was asking me a question I wasn't ready to answer. Should I go back? I told myself no. I told myself I was done with that house, with that pain. But the heart doesn't let go as easily as the mind does. Every quiet night, a part of me still heard Marcus's voice. Not the cold one that hurt me, but the small boy who used to whisper, "Don't leave me, Mommy." The heart remembers what the mind tries to forget. Weeks passed in peace. Serena came by often. We drank coffee and talked about small things. The weather, the neighbors, the flowers blooming near the fence. Life had slowed down, and that slowness felt like healing. But healing never comes in a straight line. Some days I felt strong, ready to face anything. Other days, a single thought would take me back to the moment Marcus told me I had to leave. The pain was softer now, but it was still there, sitting quietly in the corner of my soul. One morning, I received another letter. It came in a plain white envelope with no name on the outside. But I knew who it was from before I even opened it. Marcus. My hands shook as I tore the paper gently. The letter inside was longer this time. The handwriting was still neat but slower, like he had taken his time to write each word. Mom, I've been thinking a lot. The house feels empty without you. I walk through the rooms and still hear your footsteps. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now that I was only thinking of myself. I've been visiting the church every Sunday, trying to figure out why I turned into someone I promised I'd never become. I miss you, Mom. I don't know how to fix what I broke, but I want to try. Love, Marcus. I read the letter once, then again, then a third time. My eyes filled with tears I hadn't felt in months. He was trying. Those words, I miss you, I want to try. They reached the part of me that had gone quiet. But forgiveness isn't something you can rush. That night I sat at my desk and held a pen over a blank page. I wanted to answer. I wanted to tell him that I was proud of him for finally seeing what he couldn't before. But my hand wouldn't move. Not yet. I folded the paper and put it away. When I'm ready, I whispered again. Days turned into weeks. Marcus didn't send another letter, but his words stayed with me. I could feel a change happening, not just in him, but in me too. The anger that had once burned inside me was fading. In its place was something gentler, understanding. Sometimes love doesn't die. It just waits quietly for the right moment to be seen again. One afternoon, I went to town with Serena. We stopped by the library. As she looked through books, I sat near the window, staring at the street outside. People were walking, laughing, carrying groceries, living their small lives. And for a moment, I felt something warm spread inside me. It was gratitude. Gratitude for the air I was breathing. For the friends who stood by me. For the second chance that life had given me when I thought everything was lost. When we left the library, I told Serena, maybe I should write back. She smiled softly. If you feel it's time, then it is. That night, I took out a piece of paper and began to write. My hand didn't shake this time. My words came slowly, but they came. Marcus, I got your letters. I read every word. I can see that you're trying to change, and that means more to me than you know. I'm safe. I'm living quietly. You don't need to worry about me. I don't know if I'm ready to see you yet, but I want you to know that I'm not angry anymore. I hope you're taking care of yourself. Your mother, Thelma. I sealed the envelope and gave it to Serena the next morning. She promised to mail it without giving away my address. For the first time in months, I felt light. Not happy exactly, but peaceful. A few days later, Serena came by with news. He wrote back already, she said, holding another envelope. I hesitated before opening it. Mom, thank you for writing. You don't have to see me if you're not ready. I just needed to know you're alive and safe. I've been trying to fix things. I sold my car, started volunteering at the community center. I even replanted your rose bushes. They're growing again. I think about you every day. One day, if you ever want to see me, I'll be waiting. Love, Marcus. My hands trembled as I held the letter. The roses. He remembered the roses. I felt tears spill down my cheeks. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that something I planted was growing again. That evening, I walked to the garden behind Margaret's house. The flowers there were blooming too, small, colorful, full of life. I knelt down and touched the soil. I thought about how love is like a garden. If you neglect it, it dies. But if you return to it with care, it can bloom again, even after the frost. I whispered, maybe people can change. Maybe hearts can too. Over the next month, more letters came, each one gentler than the last. He told me about his new job helping seniors at a care home. He said working there made him realize how much he had misunderstood me. He said he was learning patience, learning kindness again, and every time I read his words, a little more of my pain melted away. Then one day, a package arrived. Inside was a small wooden box. My heart stopped when I saw it. It looked just like the one I had kept in my closet all those years, the one that held my most precious things. Inside was a note. "Mom, I found this in the attic. It was yours. I wanted you to have it back. Inside are the old photos of us I found in your dresser. I hope they remind you of better days. Love always, Marcus." I opened the box and found the photos. Birthdays, holidays, little moments frozen in time. Marcus with frosting on his face at age 5. Marcus holding his father's hand. Marcus and me on the porch one summer evening, smiling at nothing in particular. I held those photos to my chest and cried quietly. Maybe it was time to go back. Not to live there, not to stay. But to see if the house still stood the same, to see if forgiveness could finally have a face. When I told Serena, she looked worried. "Are you sure you're ready?" I nodded. "I need to see it for myself." She offered to drive me. We packed small bags and left early the next morning. The road stretched out in front of us again, just like before. Only this time I wasn't running away. I was going back to face what I had left behind. The drive felt longer this time. My heart beat faster the closer we got. Every mile felt heavier. When we reached the edge of the old town, I recognized everything. The grocery store, the church, the road lined with oak trees. And then, at the end of that road, I saw it. My house. It looked the same, yet different. The paint was fading. The garden had grown wild. But it was still standing, quiet and proud. Serena parked the car. "Do you want me to come with you?" she asked. I shook my head. "I need to do this alone." I stepped out and walked slowly up the path. My feet crunched on the gravel. The front door was closed, but the keyhole glimmered in the sunlight. I stopped a few steps away and looked at the windows. Through the glass, I saw movement. Marcus. He was standing by the dining table, holding something in his hand. I couldn't see what it was. I took a deep breath and knocked. He turned, startled. When he saw me, the object dropped from his hand. His eyes went wide. For a long moment, we just stared at each other through the glass. Mother and son, strangers and family all at once. Then he came to the door. His hand trembled as he opened it. "Mom," he whispered. "Hello, Marcus," I said softly. His eyes filled with tears. "You came back." "Only to visit," I said. He nodded quickly, as if afraid I'd change my mind. "Come in, please." I stepped inside. The air smelled different, cleaner, fresher. The house looked lived in again. On the table sat a vase of roses. "My roses. They're from the garden," Marcus said. "I kept them alive." I smiled faintly. "I see that." We sat down at the table, the same place where everything had fallen apart months ago. The silence between us was thick but not cruel. "I don't know where to start," he said. "I was wrong, Mom. I was cruel. I thought I was helping, but I was just tired of feeling helpless." I let my pride take over. I listened quietly. I could see how much it cost him to say those words. "I know," I said softly, "and I forgive you." He looked at me like he couldn't believe what he heard. "I forgive you," I repeated. "Not because what you did was right, but because I can't keep carrying the pain anymore." Tears ran down his face. "Thank you." We talked for hours. About his work. About his wife. About how he was trying to be better. I told him about Serena, about Margaret, about the garden I had planted. He listened the way he used to when he was young, with both ears, both eyes, and a quiet heart. When I stood to leave, he said, "Can I see you again?" I hesitated. "Maybe someday, but for now, this is enough." He nodded. "I understand." At the door, he reached out and hugged me gently. For a moment, I stood stiff. Then I let my arms wrap around him. It wasn't the same as before, but it didn't have to be. It was real. As I walked back to the car, the wind brushed my face. Serena smiled at me from the driver's seat. "How do you feel?" she asked. I looked back at the house one last time. "Lighter," I said. "Like I finally put something down I've been carrying too long." As we drove away, I realized that sometimes you have to leave to remember who you are. And sometimes you have to return to see how far you've come. The road stretched out again, long and quiet. But this time, it didn't feel like escape. It felt like peace. And deep down, I knew my story still wasn't finished, because forgiveness is not the end. It's only the beginning of understanding. The drive back to Margaret's house was quiet. Serena didn't speak, and I didn't need her to. The world outside the window passed slowly. Trees, fields, the soft light of the afternoon. Everything looked the same, but I felt different. Lighter, calmer, at peace in a way I hadn't felt for years. I rested my hand on the small wooden box in my lap. Inside were the letters Marcus had written, and the old photos he had returned to me. They were no longer painful reminders. They were proof that people can change. When we reached home, Margaret was waiting on the porch. She smiled when she saw me. "So," she said softly, "how was it?" I thought for a moment before answering. "It was hard, but good." "He's trying," she nodded. "That's all any of us can do." That night, I sat by the window and watched the stars. I thought about how strange life is, how it bends, breaks, and heals in ways we never expect. A few months ago, I had felt like my world had ended. Now, somehow, a new one had begun. As I sat there, I realized something simple and true. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting what someone did. It's about remembering who you are, even after the pain. The next morning, I woke early. The house was quiet, full of sunlight. I made coffee and opened the window. The breeze carried the smell of flowers from the garden. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. For the first time in many years, I felt home. Not in a place, but in myself. Days turned into weeks again. Serena visited often. Sometimes we didn't even talk much. We would sit on the porch watching the sun go down. Peace doesn't always need words. One evening, as the sky turned pink, Serena said, "Do you think you'll ever move back?" I shook my head slowly. "No, that house belongs to my past. I don't need to live there anymore. I already took what I needed from it," she smiled. "You're stronger than you think." I smiled too. Maybe I always was. I just forgot for a while. We laughed quietly together. Two women who had seen enough of life to understand that strength often hides in silence. A week later, a new letter arrived from Marcus. His words were gentle, full of warmth. "Mom, thank you for coming. I can't stop thinking about how much it meant to see you again. I've started attending a support group for caregivers. I tell people about you, about what I learned. I'm trying to be the son you deserved. If you ever want to visit again, the garden is waiting for you. The roses are blooming." I smiled as I read it. He was growing, finally learning that love isn't about control. It's about care. I wrote him back that evening. "Marcus, I'm proud of you. Keep watering those roses. They'll remind you that love takes time, and that it grows best when handled gently. I'll visit again one day when the season feels right. Until then, take care of yourself. Love, Mom." I sealed the letter and felt something close quietly inside me. Not sadness, but completion. After sending it, I decided to do something for myself. I took a walk to the edge of town, where the land opened wide into green fields. The air was fresh, and the sky was full of drifting clouds. I hadn't realized how much beauty had always been there, waiting for me to notice. As I walked, I passed a small bench near a willow tree. I sat down and closed my eyes. For a moment, I felt every season of my life: the youth, the work, the motherhood, the heartbreak, and now, the peace that comes after surviving all of it. I whispered to the air. "Thank you," not to anyone in particular, just to life itself. That evening, I cooked dinner for Margaret and Serena. We ate together, laughing over stories from our younger years. I hadn't laughed like that in a long time. Later, when the dishes were done and the night grew quiet, I sat outside again. The stars looked closer that night, almost like they were listening. I thought about all the mothers out there who had ever felt forgotten, and I hoped they would find their way back to themselves, the way I did. The next morning, Margaret handed me a small brown envelope. "A neighbor dropped this off," she said. He said a man left it for you at the post office. My heart skipped a beat. I opened it slowly. Inside was a simple photograph. It was of my house, freshly painted with the roses blooming wide along the fence. On the back, in Marcus's handwriting, were just 4 words, "Come see them grow." I smiled. He wasn't asking for forgiveness anymore. He was offering something better, an invitation to see the life we both thought was gone, blooming again. I placed the photograph on the mantel and left it there. Every morning after that, I would glance at it while making coffee. It reminded me that healing doesn't happen in one day. It happens in quiet moments, in choices made with love instead of anger. Summer turned into autumn. The leaves outside began to change. One morning I woke up and felt something clear inside me, a calm knowing. It was time. I packed a small bag, called Serena, and said, "Let's take one more drive." When we arrived, the house looked different from before. New paint, trimmed hedges, clean windows. It looked alive again. Marcus was outside watering the roses. When he saw the car, he froze for a second. Then he smiled. He looked older, but softer too. I stepped out of the car, and before I could say a word, he said, "You came back." "I told you I would," I said. He laughed quietly, almost shy. "They're doing well, aren't they?" I looked at the roses. They were tall, bright, and full. "Yes," I said softly. "They're beautiful." We stood there together, looking at them. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was gentle, the kind that only comes when all the shouting is done and love is finally allowed to breathe again. Marcus handed me a small watering can. "You want to do it?" he asked. I took it and poured water slowly over the flowers. The scent of earth and petals rose into the air. "They missed me," I said with a smile. He nodded. We both did. We walked through the garden, talking about simple things, the weather, the neighbors, the plans he had for repainting the fence. Nothing dramatic, nothing painful, just easy words between 2 people who had finally learned to listen. When it was time to go, Marcus walked me to the car. He didn't try to stop me or ask for promises. He just said, "Come back anytime." "I will," I said. On the drive home, Serena smiled. "You did it," she said. I looked out the window at the passing fields. "No," I said softly. "We did it, me and him." We both found our way back. The road was the same one I had taken when I ran away months ago. But now it didn't feel like escape. It felt like returning to myself. When I reached home, I placed the small watering can on the porch as a reminder. Every time I looked at it, I thought about how love, like flowers, only grows when you keep tending it. As the days went on, I began writing again. I started a small journal, not for anyone else to read, just for me. I wrote about forgiveness, about strength, about the kind of love that bends but doesn't break. I called it The Return. Sometimes Margaret would find me writing and ask what it was about. I'd smile and say, "It's about remembering that even after losing everything, you can still come home to yourself." One Sunday, months later, I received another letter from Marcus. It wasn't long, just a few lines. "Mom, I'm proud of you. Thank you for teaching me what love really means. I'll keep taking care of the house and the garden, just like you did. The door is always open. Your son, Marcus." I placed the letter beside the first one he had ever written. Then I whispered to myself, "That's enough." That evening, I sat outside and watched the sunset. The light spread across the sky in soft gold and pink. I thought about all the versions of myself I had been, the young mother, the tired widow, the woman who ran away, and now, the woman who found peace. I realized that every version of me had done her best. Every version had survived long enough to bring me here, to this quiet evening where nothing hurt anymore. And I knew then that this was what healing looked like. Not fireworks, not grand endings, just peace. As the sun slipped below the horizon, I closed my eyes and smiled. I didn't need to escape anymore. I didn't need to prove anything. I had already won the quiet kind of victory that only the heart understands. Because true freedom isn't running away from the people who hurt you, it's returning to yourself and realizing you were whole all along. And as the night fell gently around me, I whispered the same words I had said on that first day I left home. Only this time, they felt different. It had only just begun. But now, at last, I was living it. The night was calm. Thelma finally found peace, not by changing the past, but by learning to live beyond it. Her story reminds us that sometimes love doesn't mean holding on. Sometimes it means letting go. And still wishing the other person well. If this story touched your heart today, take a deep breath. Think about the people in your life, the ones you've loved, the ones you've lost, and the ones you're learning to forgive. It's never too late to make peace, even if all you can offer is silence and love. Now, before you go, if this story made you feel something, even for a moment, please click the like button. It helps this story reach more hearts, just like yours. And if you want to hear more stories like Thelma's, stories about love, loss, family, and the quiet courage that lives inside all of us, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon. That way, you won't miss the next story that might just speak straight to your heart. Leave a comment below and tell me, do you believe people can truly change? I read every comment, and your words mean more than you know. Thank you for watching. Thank you for feeling. And most of all, thank you for remembering that every heart deserves a second chance. Until next time, take care of yourself and never forget. You are never too old, and it's never too late to begin again.